Today, I had someone ask me a question, what I thought about this whole thing about whether Ripple would be classified as security and all of this stuff. I First off, I want to say I'm not an attorney, and so what I'm about to tell you is just some of my thoughts on this topic, as well as um, really just guided by my common sense as well as my life experience. But I want to cover a lot of the things that I haven't necessarily seen covered in this conversation to date. Some of them have been, but not tied together quite as much. So I'll go through this. The first thing, when I remember this first coming up on the radar, was this article that's on the screen right now, on April 23rd, and it said it was the former CFTC head says big cryptocurrencies could be classified as securities. Now, when I saw this, um, my first thought was that I smell a rat, and that's still my thought on this. And this is this guy Gary Gensler, the former chairman of Commodity Futures Trading Commission, said that government officials should take a closer look at the largest coins by market capitalization, not just at tokens sold in ICOs. Ethereum's Ether, Ripple's XRP could probably be classified as securities. So there's several questions that popped out at me right off the bat when I heard this. They're bringing some guy out of retirement, out of nowhere. He all of a sudden wants to weigh in on this, like as if he cares. This Gary Gensler guy, and this is like the oldest trick in the book. This screams of some big, huge money guy in New York City who's probably shorted some of these things and decides he's going to get one of his old buddies and put him up. I mean, that is what this screams of. I'm not saying that's what's happening, but this kind of stuff right here, watch out when you see this kind of thing. Anyway, April 23rd, this happens. And then right behind that, this is another thing. I also think that this was intentionally put out there to plant the seed in all of the minds of all of the nasty plaintiff attorneys in this country to do what this guy did next, which was on May 4th. This plaintiff attorney, this is that lawsuit where the some kid lost apparently $500, and he's just so affected by this. He went and hired a plaintiff attorney. In my opinion, most of these type things would be hatched from this guy. I wouldn't be a bit surprised if that attorney read this and had a great idea. And then it was later found out that the attorney that filed this lawsuit is good, but is in Facebook pictures with the guy filing the lawsuit. So they're friends. So that smells too. But this is the kind of stuff, and this is where I want to talk to you kind of about the common sense and life experience. And that is, anytime you have anything that's as big as Ripple and XRP is and is going to be, you're going to have this kind of stuff. There's a reason that we stand to make so much money with XRP. And the reason is it's high risk, high reward. The risk being things that are unforeseen, such as plaintiff attorneys filing lawsuits, or a retired guy with the SEC coming out and saying, oh, this could be a security. These are part of those risks that you have to accept when you come into something like this. You have to be a big boy and put your big boy pants on, and you have to assume that there will be certain things there on this roller coaster ride. You're going to have certain things, but again, like I've said before, this all comes back to: do you believe in what you invested in? Do you believe that the people at Ripple saw this coming? I do. Do you believe that the people at Ripple have laid the proper groundwork to fight this battle if they ever needed to fight it? I do. I believe in what I invested in, and that's why this stuff does not bother me the way that it bothers a lot of people that I've seen online. But I'm going to keep going here. Okay. So Ripple's a security. Let's say they want to call it a security. Well, let's look at the definition of a security. It all starts with the definition. Security is a fungible, negotiable financial instrument that holds some type of monetary value. It represents an ownership position in a publicly traded corporation via stock, a creditor relationship with a governmental body or corporation represented by owning that entity's bond, or rights to ownership as represented by an option. Let's face it, folks. Ripple is in no way, no how, not in a million years is Ripple a security. It's a new thing. These regulators, they don't have their arms around it. So the bottom line is, my common sense tells me that if they even begin to try to call Ripple or XRP a security, it won't be because of the actual legal reasons. It'll be for reasons that we don't know about. In other words, political reasons. But you talking about a long shot, calling Ripple a security, that you're talking about reaching big time. You just read that definition right there. You literally would have to create another definition in order to even capture cryptocurrencies, in my opinion. But the guy yesterday came out and he said yesterday they will not change the securities laws to cater to cryptocurrencies. So what they're saying is, they're sticking with their definition, and they're just going to decide whether an ICO or a Ripple or an Ethereum are securities. Well, for whatever reason, they've all declared, oh, well, Bitcoin's just automatically not a security. Well, that, in my opinion, is complete BS. Just because you don't know who created it does not. The guy that the Satoshi Nakamoto, he could be sitting somewhere in his bathrobe right now, sitting on $1 billion worth of Ripple, and you may not call that raising money, but it raised money for his lifestyle, didn't it? So the idea that you just, we're just going to exempt that for whatever reason, that's bull, in my opinion, as well. But none of these, including Bitcoin, I say, when you look at these and you really look at this definition, you really can't put any of them in there. You can move these things around the world in seconds. None of them apply to this, but I understand that they need to get the regulation around it. But anyway, I want to keep going with this, and some of these are scattered thoughts, but I want to cover all of my thought patterns on all of these things. The next thing here, this is where Ripple came out and they started sending their people out to say it's not a security. And like I said, if you think that Ripple, the company, has not foreseen all of this, I'm going to show you why I know they've foreseen it. Do you remember a guy named Jed McCaleb? And now remember, before I bring up Jed McCaleb, Ripple, the whole point, the whole reason that the main reason Ripple says you can't classify this as a security, besides the fact of what cryptocurrency is that Ripple the company did not create XRP. They were donated XRP from the people that created it. The company was donated the XRP, and if you didn't put it out, then you can't be in trouble for it when they try to call it a security. Well, so let's look at this. This is interesting because if you remember, Jed McCaleb was one of the owners of XRP, still is, I believe. He owns a lot of it. And they actually, I don't know if it was a lawsuit, but they formed some kind of agreement where he couldn't just unload his XRP onto the market. But anyway, so Jed McCaleb left Ripple, and he's a current owner of XRP, I believe. What did he do? He went and formed Stellar. Well, have you ever wondered why Stellar and Tron's another one? Many of these cryptocurrencies, when they come out, they're not companies. They're foundations. They are organizations. And so there's a reason for that. Exempt securities. Look down here at what exempt securities are. Nonprofits, a security issued by a person organized and operated exclusively for religious, educational, benevolent, fraternal, charitable, social, athletic, or reformatory purposes, or a chamber of commerce and not for profit. So in other words, you cannot be classified as security if you're a nonprofit. You go ahead and write it down. That's why Stellar formed a nonprofit. Now they can say all day long that it's because out of the kindness of their heart and they're wanting to help people, but that's why they did it. That's why Tron did it. That's why a lot of these are doing it. Is if you're a nonprofit, you cannot be classified as security. Okay, I'm moving along. Now this goes to my point. This came out, I believe, yesterday. Former SEC chair to represent Ripple in the lawsuit that I mentioned at the beginning of this video. This goes back to what I was saying about, do you know what you're invested in? Do you know who you're invested in? I know exactly who I'm invested in. I'm invested in the type of people that are smart enough and well funded enough to hire a former SEC chair, but they're not going to fool around with just some lawyer. They're hiring a former SEC chair to represent them to talk to the SEC and in this lawsuit about whether XRP is a security. I mean, who else can do that? Who else is smart enough to pull that off? So if they've got this lady heading up this lawsuit, who else do they have in the background that we don't even know about that is going to fight this fight? This is long way from over. And I've got my money on Ripple, literally. Here's where this is where the rubber meets the road, right here. And this is the question you need to ask yourself as an XRP investor or a potential XRP investor. This article right here is about whether the SEC should give amnesty to illegal ICOs. Now, what I believe this is really about, and I've always lived in a world where I see things through the prism of, well, what reasonableness? What's reasonable? And I think that the law is supposed to see things through that light. What is considered reasonable? There are so many gray areas with cryptocurrencies, and especially with Ripple XRP. If you really take a step back and look at it, if you're the SEC, what would you do? You're not gonna, if you try to kill innovation such as Ripple and XRP, how does that affect, from a reasonable standpoint, how does that affect the U.S. on the world stage, competition wise? So what is amnesty? Amnesty basically would be the SEC looking at this and saying, well, maybe XRP is a security, but let's get together and figure out a way to work this out. And that's, they were talking here about a model amnesty program and how we would find a way the SEC would find a way to integrate the new asset class. They create a new asset class and then integrate it into the existing system. I believe they're not going to call it a security is what I really believe. But I believe that if they did, by some miracle, some crazy, ridiculous miracle, call XRP a security, I believe you would see some variety of this. Now, next I want to kind of go through what some of my other thoughts are on this. Okay, so these are just my thoughts. These are not, this is not, well, if I can, okay, here we go. This is not, I mean, like I said, I don't know 100% for certain what's going to happen, but these are my thoughts on things that would, maybe happen. What would happen if XRP was classified as a security? This is one thing I think would happen for sure. Okay. And again, we all have our big boy pants on because, and you know how many short-term hits that I have sat through in XRP for a variety of reasons that made no sense. So this is just part of owning XRP as far as I'm concerned. But I believe, like a lot of people believe, even if they did call it a security, the good things that will happen in the medium to long term would far outweigh this anyway. And XRP is not going anywhere because digital assets are a worldwide thing. Don't forget that they're a worldwide thing. And that's the reason they can't put this genie back in the bottle. Okay. Another thing that would happen if they declared it a security, U.S.-based crypto exchanges would have to properly be licensed, or they would have to delist XRP. So if they weren't licensed, they would have to immediately delist XRP. And again, does common sense tell you, or reasonableness tell you that the SEC would declare such a thing overnight and kill an industry? Common sense and reasonableness does not tell me that at all. There would have to be much larger, in my opinion, evil forces behind it for them to do something like that. And I think that Ripple's forces for changing the world rival anybody in terms of rich and powerful people at this point. The other question is, could traditional brokerages list XRP immediately, just like the non-traditional crypto exchanges would have to delist? So if they had to delist, would that not also mean that Goldman and Morgan Stanley and all the traditional brokerages would immediately be able to list? And you better believe they would if they could. Ripple to be declared illegally selling a security. This, to me, here's your worst case scenario right here, is that Ripple, the company, is declared to have been illegally selling XRP, which is a security, and we're shutting you down. Does that pass the reasonableness test to you, or common sense to completely put a stop to something? And don't forget, Japan, SBI owns 10.5% of Ripple. So you're talking about creating sorry. Also, and then I mentioned the SBI amnesty here, SEC amnesty, because that is also a factor here. U.S. companies using XRP for bank transfers would have to be licensed brokers to buy and sell XRP moving between currencies. So let's think this out. So remittance companies as well as banks, let's say they're using XCurrent and XRapid for the movement of money in the United States, and it's all of a sudden happening in 3 seconds because XRapid is going live here and other places imminently. They're using XRapid, and they're able to compete with people all over the world who are doing it as well, like in Japan. And all of a sudden, the SEC says you can't do this. So now we can't use XRP. Now we can't save 40 to 70% like they're doing in Europe and in Japan. Doesn't pass the reasonableness test for me. I don't believe it for a minute. Other countries would have an immediate advantage using XRP for cross-border payments. U.S. would kill its advantage. Is the U.S. going to do this? We're in a world competition. Is the U.S. going to do that? I don't believe it for a minute. In my opinion, all the roads lead back to SBI Holdings' 10.5% ownership of Ripple. I don't think Ripple partnered with SBI Holdings for no reason. I think that Ripple sees this as a worldwide changing event. I think Ripple sees this as a worldwide revolution, not trying to take over governments. That's not what I'm saying. A worldwide revolution in payments. And I believe that Ripple recognized early on that they needed to spread themselves around the world because that's how big this was. And I think Ripple knew that the security thing would be an issue. I think that when Jed McCaleb left Ripple, he intentionally formed a foundation because he knew that this would be an issue. But I think at the same time, Ripple knew it would be an issue. And for that reason, this is part of the reason they formed the thing with SBI. Again, these are my thoughts. People are asking me what my thoughts are on securities. These are my thoughts. The SBI VC is opening in July. They're going live with 61 banks, 80% of the banks in Japan. And there have been mention, the SBI CEO has said that he's all in on XRP. So is the United States going to all of a sudden say, no, we can't have this XRP and just declare it a security and we're shutting Ripple down? It's not going to happen, in my opinion. It's not going to happen. Ripple they have deals all over Europe. The Bank of Santander is also talking about using XRapid. And what Brad Garlinghouse has said over and over and over and over and over, use case. This is all about use case. What happens? And when he talks about use case, what he has said over and over, all of these will disappear if they don't have a use case. And he's right. But the use case also creates a very gray area where when it comes to classifications as securities. If XRP is being used around the world in a use case, is a blip, let's say they called it a security. What happens is a blip in price from speculation. Will it even make a difference when XRP is being used around the world? I question that. This is my opinion. The U.S. won't do it, but if they did it, we'll be tied up in court while XRP use case conquers the world and the U.S. gets left behind. That, if you want to know my opinion based on common sense, reasonableness, and life experience, that is what I believe. So, you all asked me what I thought. Okay, there's one other thing I wanted to go over, and this came out yesterday. And this is the bigger picture. This is why I believe that none of this is going to happen. And if it does, I believe that the SEC will take Ripple and XRP in and will work with them. I don't think this will be that type of a thing. This is a blog post that Coinbase put out yesterday. Our path to listing SEC-regulated crypto securities. And this is what's fixing to happen. This is where the whole industry is going to go. Is all of these crypto exchanges and the traditional brokerages, the traditional brokerages won't have to do anything probably. But the crypto exchanges over time are going to put themselves in a position where they can be broker dealers as well, and will be able to list whether something's declared a security or not a security. They'll be able to list them, and this is going to change everything. But the reason that they want to do this is what I want you to understand. And the reason Ripple XRP is so huge, and the reason they're not going to do all this stuff they're rumoring to do that's trying to scare everybody. This is it right here in green. And somebody highlighted this. I didn't highlight this. It says, ultimately, we can envision a world where we may even work with regulators to tokenize existing types of securities, bringing to this space the benefits of cryptocurrency-based markets like 24/7 trading and real-time settlement and chain of title. So what I want to tell you is, back when I was a financial advisor, and again, I was a financial advisor at one of the top 2 or 3 brokerages on Wall Street in the 90s. And I can remember meeting with a client who was a long-time shareholder in a stock, and literally had the certificates of those stocks in a closet, believe it or not. And I can remember taking those certificates to the broker when they were opening an account with me, and the broker would actually had a way that they would hold those certificates in custody, and the owner of those certificates would literally have to sign them, and all of the certificates had a CUSIP number, and those certificates were held in custody. And I'm not sure if it was by the actual broker, if there was a third party. Probably was a third party, but I can imagine some warehouse or some huge place somewhere that houses all. I thought it was ridiculous at the time, the idea that at this day and time with the internet and all, that we would still have these things stored in these, and they were certificates still. Well, that's what's fixing to change. And that's the reason that the cryptocurrency markets are going to swallow the stock exchanges of the world, is because you're going to have, instead of the ridiculous method that is the way it is to this day in stock certificates, your ownership will be on the blockchain, and you'll be able to show your ownership on the blockchain. And who knows, you may be able to own your stock on the blockchain. Like, let's say Exxon, for instance. I envision a day when maybe I can own a share of Exxon that's signified by owning a token, but also maybe I could own a preferred share of their stock or a bond in Exxon on that same token. Who knows where this is all going, but I do know that this right here is where this is all going. The SEC is not, now I'm not saying that the SEC is not going to come down on some of these ridiculous ICOs which are fraudulent, but go to Ripple's website. I don't care who you are. Go to Ripple's website. These guys are no fraud. These are like, this is the standard for cryptocurrencies, Ripple. And so this is where the world's going right here. Read it again. This is where the world's going. There's a reason. There was an article that it always bothered me. I've said on here before that words mean things. People don't just say things. And usually if they use a certain word, it means things. There was an article not too long ago that I meant to show you, and I may have forgotten to. It was an article about the NASDAQ, and it was the CEO of the NASDAQ, and she said that the way it was worded was that the NASDAQ would consider becoming a cryptocurrency exchange down the road. It was not that the NASDAQ would consider opening a cryptocurrency exchange. It was that the NASDAQ would consider becoming a cryptocurrency exchange. And when I heard that, I knew that this is the reason that they worded it that way, is because they know that cryptocurrencies are going to swallow traditional stock exchanges. So I think I've told you guys plenty today, and I hope you've enjoyed it. Now listen, I'm not an investment advisor. This is for entertainment purposes only. I tell you this every time because I'm not. I want you to please subscribe if you like this and spread it around to your friends and hit the like button as many times as you can. I'm trying to build this channel so that I can give you more and more content. Now, I like to remind everybody, if you look in the description of my videos, just about all of them, you can buy the Ledger Nano S. And for those of you that don't know what it is, the Ledger Nano S is a way to store your digital assets in cold storage offline. It's the safest way that there is. I have one. I use one. I've been doing this since 2014. And trust me, I've done the research. If you want to keep your things safe until some of these brokerages that are getting in the game solve the cold storage problem and the custody problem so that they will store it for you or it's insured, you need a Ledger Nano S. Also, I hate asking for donations, but this is not some huge money maker for me right now or anything. If you want to donate, you can donate to me in the description. Also, I've got my XRP, Bitcoin, and Ethereum addresses. And I also have, for those of you that are new to this, you can also, there's a link if you want to open a Coinbase account and get yourself started investing in digital assets. That's a way to start. I still buy through Coinbase. Maybe I'm an old fuddy-duddy in this space. And you can also open a Binance account. I would recommend opening a Coinbase and a Binance account because Coinbase, you cannot buy XRP at Coinbase. You can buy it at Binance. So what I do is I still buy my Bitcoin at Coinbase, and then I transfer it to Binance, and I buy XRP at Binance. Both of those are top-notch places. Thank you for listening. I am out of here.